talking with, there we go. All right, so tonight's guest is Coach Natalie Grasso, also known as the Keto Bikini Pro, a WBFF Diva Bikini Pro, mind-body transformation coach, and a fierce advocate for ancestral health and low-carb living. After overcoming disordered eating and reclaiming her health, Natalie has helped thousands transform their bodies, mindset with her signature blend of keto, performance, and purpose. So we're going to dive into how she turned a personal healing journey into a lifestyle, a business, and stage-worthy physique. So we're about to go all in on mindset, muscle, and metabolic truth. All right. Welcome, Natalie. How are you?
Doing well. I'm loving some of the language you're using there. Mindset, muscle, and metabolic truth. I need to use that for something. That's beautiful. That's a great way to sum it up.
Thank you there. Thank you. Well, hey, that's what we get from you. So we want to hear a little bit about you. Okay, so a little bit about your story. What led you to the whole low carb lifestyle, and how did it change your life?
Oh boy. Okay. It's crazy. I always say when I'm explaining the backstory to try to not make it we could talk for a week about my backstory, but one day I'm going to write a book called Breakup Bodybuilders. I ended a toxic relationship. I was 29 years old. I was looking ahead at my 30th birthday, and I was in the worst shape of my life in my 20s. It was a mess, mentally, physically, everything. Not only had I kind of let myself go, the falling in love and moving in with someone and getting comfortable and eating all the things, and all of our food decisions were based on what tastes good at the moment. What are you in the mood for, right? So it was a lot of like pizza nights and fried chicken or whatever we felt like. And then we would try things to get healthy that we thought was getting healthy, but it really wasn't. But ultimately, I was being cheated on. It was not a good situation. I waited too long to change it. It's funny how life parallels, our health journey parallels everything else, every other life journey, right? Relationships are a really good parallel. I stayed way too long in an unhappy place. My mental health was taking a toll. And so when I finally took the leap to leave that relationship, kick him out, and move on, it was all about, who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I want life to be like? It was just reinventing myself and rediscovering myself. And there was a lot of healing that had to happen with that, emotional, spiritual, and ultimately it was the spiritual journey of rediscovering myself and God and who I am in God that actually ended up leading me down a rabbit hole that ended up in the low-carb keto carnivore space. Starting with seeing my body as a vessel of the Holy Spirit, and that if I want to respect my body as a vessel and treat it as such, I need to stop putting garbage in. And so it's actually Lent 2010 or 2011. For Lent, I gave up dairy, and that's where my whole journey started. And it was a simple thing, right? It was like the obvious dairy, because I always assumed that I had a problem with dairy because I started having issues when I was young now, once my journey got started, I discovered I had a problem with a lot more than just dairy, and it was leaky gut, and it was, gut dysbiosis and so many other things. I was sick a lot as a kid. I was sick in my teens. I was sick in my 20s. I had a lot of chronic conditions that were just one on top of the other on top of the other. And it was, managing it with medications, just a lot of pharmaceuticals. That did not help my mental health. A lot of the things I was taking were impacting my mental health as well. And so just giving up the dairy, the obvious dairy things like the ice cream and the cheeses and things like that, led me down a rabbit hole the following year of doing it again, but reading labels to see, well, okay, I gave up dairy and I was successful at doing that, but I didn't stick to it because it was just for Lent. And I could only do things if it was for something more than a body composition goal. It was not about weight loss. It was, even if I was trying to do it for my health, I needed it to be something beyond me. And so when I did it for a religious sacrifice, I was capable of doing it. And so I waited a whole year, and then I did it again the following year, but I got more granular with it. I said, well, I'm not going to eat anything that has dairy in it. So that is what started everything, because I learned what's in food. That now we would say it's not food. The things that I was reading with ingredient labels that had laundry lists of ingredients is really not food. It's pseudo food. It's frankenfood, but it's not real food. And that's what led me to discover real food. And that's what started the whole thing. It was just, what is all of this stuff? Okay, it has, the first revelation was pastries are made with dairy. So that means I'm not eating pastries. And, people would think I was giving up bread or something. I'm like, no, like, I'm not giving up bread for Lent. I'm giving up dairy, but everything is made with dairy. Yes. And so it kind of led me down this rabbit hole. And a lot of things started clicking down that journey. It was the same time, I think, when Survivor was popular on TV and gluten came on the scene. And it was because of, what's her name on Survivor, who had all of these problems and didn't know she was celiac.
Yeah, she was on The View, the blonde, the runner.
Yes. Yep. And so she discovered when she went on Survivor that she felt better when she was barely eating. And she discovered that, it's this thing called gluten and this thing called celiac. And it was just, it must have been early 2000s, right? When that was gaining traction. And so it was just kind of one thing led to the next thing. And I just started paying attention to what I was putting in my body. I started pulling out more of the crap foods. And then I got to essentially where I was eating a lot of meat and vegetables. I was still eating beans. I was still eating certain things, but I went to a hibachi restaurant with friends for dinner, and I asked for just the meat and vegetables. And a friend at the table asked me if I was paleo. And I said, what's that? This was like 2012, I think, probably back then. And so I started Googling, well, what is this paleo diet she's talking about? And I learned about that. And so that was the next iteration. And really, I went paleo. That was the big thing that really changed my life. I would say 80%, 90% of the improvements all happened from just going paleo. It wasn't even about low carb, keto, carnivore. None of that was even really being talked about very much yet. But if you go paleo, at least back then, before they had all the food companies got behind it and started making all kinds of things, back then it was low carb. Because if you were doing paleo, okay, you might eat some sweet potatoes and fruit and vegetables, but you weren't eating breads and grains and rice and, all of that. And so essentially it became pretty low carb for me. And that's when I really learned to discover food in its natural state without covering it with a whole bunch of sauce, because remember, I gave up dairy first. So I wasn't covering everything in cheese and cream sauce. I was, salmon tastes really good, steak. And I almost never cooked steak. I was not a carnivore yet because I didn't know how to cook steak. But it would, going on this taste journey of discovering real food without, unadulterated. Probably I was just using a lot of olive oil and salt. Which I say to this day, if you want to take my carnivore card, you have fun, because you will pry the olive oil out of my cold, dead Greek hand. It ain't
your culture. It's your culture. Wow.
So that's what started it all. And I just couldn't believe how good I felt. I lost 30 pounds. I'm a very petite individual, barely 5 feet tall. So 130 pounds on my frame was a lot. And if you see the pictures, it's really interesting. When I say, I don't usually use the numbers because it doesn't sound impressive. Like, oh,
Yeah.
50 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds, like people talk about. But it really wasn't about that. First and foremost, it was about getting off every medication, not relying on pharmaceuticals anymore, feeling good after my meals.
Yeah.
For the longest time, as long as I could remember, I had to go lay down after a meal. I couldn't be
Mm.
social. I couldn't be present in my mind, in my body. I just felt sick. I'd be holding my stomach. I'd have to go lay down. I felt tired and lethargic. And I couldn't believe that after a meal, I could finish a meal. And if I had to run from someone or something after a meal, I could do it.
Wow. I remember your other half, Coach Bronson said the same thing. Wow.
Yeah. I
So
mean, it
you guys
just,
have that in common.
and
Yeah.
it's one of those things of, you've lived in this chronic low grade inflammation or high grade inflammation for some people, but you've lived in
Mhm.
this chronically inflamed state for so long with aches and pains and just living less than your best to discover what life can be like, feeling amazing, feeling optimal, feeling the way we really should feel as humans.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, oh, see,
Oh,
what
there
a
we go.
difference.
So that
You
was
know,
2011. On the left, that was 2011, the first time I went to Puerto Rico. And then last year on the cruise, we went to Puerto Rico. And I said, oh my gosh, I need to take these same pictures in these same places to really document the differences.
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at my face. My face was, I
Oh,
looked like I was allergic to something, just blown up. It was,
oh my gosh. Yeah. You know what? It's so funny because it's like, well, see, I'm just overcome. You know me, I love the muscle. So we're going to talk about that in a second because that, yes, you've lost the weight, but you added some serious muscle. And so we're definitely going to talk about that. So, yes. So now really just to wrap that up, you came to keto and then you dabbled into carnivore within the last couple of years, right? So, but then you kind of like, do you weave in and out?
I
My weaving in and out is way bigger, but like I know you kind of do keto carnivore.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So actually, it was bodybuilding that brought me into keto. So I had
Oh,
been paleo 5, 6 years or so. 2016, I went to Paleo FX conference that they used to have in Austin. And I met Menno Henselmans, who at the time was a WBFF pro. And I cornered him. I went to his talk and I cornered him afterwards because I was in the middle of my first comp prep that I thought I was going to be competing the previous year. But I ended up postponing it. Thank God. Divine intervention. I needed to be training with serious
wow.
trainers for
Yes.
longer. I didn't understand most women, and we can get into it, who get into bikini bodybuilding, a lot of the time they're getting into it just to lose the weight. And I was one of those too. I wanted to get the fat off and see how amazing I could look. And I did have a muscular foundation because I was a dancer.
Yes.
Went to school for dance. That was my major in college. And I had been doing pole dancing. I had gotten into pole dancing. It was part of my rediscovery of myself after leaving that relationship,
Oh,
rediscovering this sensual side, but it put muscle on my upper body. And,
yeah.
a traditional dancer, so I had more like lower body. You can see in this picture, if you go to the picture on the left, now those are my last 3 pro shows. But the picture on the left at the top of my profile right now is the first 4 years that I was lifting consistently. And
Wow.
that's, 2015 when I thought I was going to compete. I competed in 2016 and I was tiny. And then 2017 and 2018. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a different person in
Yeah.
2018 to the 2015 picture, right? Newbie
Mhm.
gains, boy. I wish I could get those newbie gains back now.
Oh,
I'll tell you.
oh, tell me about it.
There is nothing like the newbie gains.
Yeah.
But 2016 was when I went to Paleo FX and I spoke with Menno and I said, hey, I really believe in what I've learned through the paleo diet, which is the importance of high fat. All the incredible benefits that we get from a high fat, moderate to high fat diet, just having a higher fat, healthy fats than the average population, and particularly bodybuilders, because bodybuilders use a low fat protocol to get to stage. 90% of them, 99% of them. High carb, high protein, low fat, and then they cut their carbs as they come into the show. And I was working with a traditional trainer for that prep, and I was a few weeks in, and at that point I was already like, okay, I'm eating all the beets and sweet potatoes that I can possibly eat on this 40% carb. It was 40-40-20. If you remember the old school,
Yes.
40-20, right? 40% carbs, 40% protein, 20% fat. And I got so sick after that. I got ill, like a flu or something. I was down for 4 weeks. It took me out. They had me doing a ton of cardio from day one, along with high carb approach. And I was just like, I don't believe this is what's best for my body. If I want to do this, and I went into competing saying, okay, I only want to do this if I can do this in a healthy way. I'm not willing to put my health at risk after gaining my health through my journey. And so he's the one that put the bug in my ear. Well, I think you should consider keto then. That's probably going to be a better option for you. And then I found Keto Gains, which at the time was massive group. I ended up working with them, coaching for them for a while before I went out on my own years later. But they were like, Luis Villasenor was like my little mentor.
Wow.
And they taught me how to do it right. And I was coming from very much a philosophy that they follow, which is a clean template, right? Clean, real food keto. So going to carnivore was not that difficult. Just like going keto was not that difficult for me because I was already paleo. So I was like, okay, let's just get rid of the sweet potatoes now and get rid of the fruits, any other vegetable that's higher carb. And boom, then that was an easy transition. I didn't have a lot of the keto flu and all of the transitional issues that a lot of people have. But boy, did I still have a lot of gut issues.
Yes. And that's what I was curious about, because I know that, well, we struggled with, finding the right diet for you. But with carnivore, were you able to, because I think it's the best elimination diet ever. Whether you do it long-term or short-term, you truly get to know your body by going carnivore, for at least 30 days you find out. So what did you find out that really was like, okay, this is not good for my body?
Oh my gosh. So, okay, I have Bronson to thank, because it was when I met him in 2021 that we were dating, we were in different states. And so I would come stay with him for like 2 weeks and then go home and then come back. And I thought to myself, well, I'm already keto. When I stay with him, I'll just eat carnivore because that's the way he eats. And so the first thing I noticed, honestly, was not even a physical thing. It was, wow, this is so much easier. I don't have to buy produce. I don't have to worry about when it's going to go bad. I don't have to use it all up. I don't have to spend hours. I used to spend hours meal prepping. And why? Because of the vegetables. It's not difficult to meal prep meats. You can cook a whole bunch of meat and you're good for the week. It's the freaking vegetable. It was exhausting, all of the meal prep. And so I didn't have to do that anymore. It would just be, all right, cook up some ground beef, cook up whatever it was and eat it on the spot. And so I loved it. I love lamb. Once again, Greek girl here. Like I was all about the lamb and the beef.
I love lamb.
It was lamb, beef, and eggs when I started. And then sparingly some chicken and some pork. And I still pretty much eat that way. It's mostly lamb, beef, chicken and pork here and there, salmon every day. Salmon, it's beef, lamb, and salmon on the regular all the time. And then turkey, chicken, pork from time to time, things like that. And I have a few extras because I still don't do dairy. So I will use a lot of coconut products. I don't do almonds anymore, except for nut pods, which is a mixture of coconut and almond, because it's a much smaller amount of almond. But I mostly lean on coconut products for the dairy-free kind of thing.
Yeah.
So coconut yogurt, which never was a thing back in the day. I'm loving that they have actual coconut yogurt you can buy at the store now.
Yes, and I got some the other day. I liked it.
Oh my gosh, Kulina, by the way, is my favorite brand. Not
Okay.
sponsored, but yeah, look at that. She's showing my dairy-free recipes. So funny story, this is an old Instagram that I resurrected just recently and retitled it the Keto Bikini Kitchen. So this is where I'm putting all my recipes whenever I have one, and I've just dumped a bunch of old recipes on there. So y'all can find all kinds of stuff from paleo to keto to carnivore and everything in between. Eventually there will be a book, the Keto Bikini
Yes.
Kitchen cookbook. Everybody keeps asking for it. So I'm like, all right, I got to make good on that.
That is good.
Yes.
Yes.
What I eat now. But no, carnivore, the biggest thing with carnivore. So I have been on a massively long gut healing journey. I have done pretty much every gut healing protocol you can think of. I still to this day recommend to a lot of clients the GAPS protocol, gut and psychology syndrome, or gut and physiology syndrome. She wrote a second book, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. I did that back in 2014, and that is the thing that 100% healed my gut in 2014. And then I ate a bunch of junk and ruined it all again. And like, y'all don't know how freaking easy it is. You start putting this stuff back in your body, the frankenfoods, and your body will quickly break down on you again. And I have figured this out along the way. Ayana knows I have struggled. You know, I had eating disorders when I was in my teens that reared their ugly head again and came back. I had a massive bulimia relapse in 2020. And then I had to do a lot of healing all over again because of the dysregulation and what I did to my body. And I had to go through even a personal mental emotional healing journey of I did this to myself. And then when I looked back and thought about a lot of the issues I was having in my 20s with my health, I think were related very much to my disordered eating patterns in my teens.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you next, was more about the disordered eating, because I definitely connect with you on that. Like, I didn't realize what it was until much later. So you said that you had a bout as a teenager, and then during shutdown, it came back. So what was that like? Why do you think it happened as a teenager? Why do you think it resurfaced in 2020? What do you think was the core issue?
Yeah, so eating disorders, especially, you know, clinically diagnosable eating disorders, but disordered eating in general, and the grand majority of the population have disordered eating thoughts and patterns and habits, and none of it has anything to do with food.
I agree with you on that one. There's going to be people that disagree with that, but okay.
I say that we do not emotionally eat. We eat to avoid our emotions. We are not coping when we are eating because of emotions. It's not a way of coping. We're avoiding. It's an avoidant behavior. So as a teen, as a preteen and teen, I mean, I was bulimic from 13 or 14 years old through my junior year of college, off and on. And I mean, to the point where I got really passionate about eating disorders in college, and I studied it, and I thought about doing it as a career, or at least working in centers. For those of you who are not familiar with Michelle Hearn, she's an incredible person to follow. I'm going to be seeing her on the low carb cruise. I'm really excited. She's speaking this year. She is a registered dietitian. She wrote a book called The Dietitian's Dilemma, and it's all about eating disorder recovery, because she was a runner and an anorexic, and eating disorder recovery and the disservice that they are doing to people in the way that they force feed for recovery, which is it's terrible what they're doing to people. There we go. Yes, that's her. Run, eat, meet, repeat on Instagram. She's amazing. Breaks down a lot of the debunks a lot of the crap out there in the traditional dietitian world. So as a preteen and teen, it was very much about not knowing who I was. It was about identity crisis. We had moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Atlanta, Georgia. And the outskirts of Atlanta, like suburbs. So it was very much a culture shock. As a preteen, so we're talking middle school, right? So as I'm entering middle school, we made this massive shift where nobody I ever knew in my life moved in or out of where we live. We were in that kind of lifer Boston suburb to Georgia. It was just, who am I? I don't even know how to answer questions about who I am. My ethnicity is kind of ambiguous, so there were a lot of questions about my ethnicity. I didn't know how to answer that. I came into a lot of insecurities about my body, about how I looked, about what people thought of me. And the eating, it was an uncontrollable binge eating that then led to bulimic behaviors. And let me be clear for anyone who may be engaging in bulimic behaviors that do not know that they're doing that, because I've shed light on this for a lot of clients. If you are binging and then fasting to make up for it, that is a bulimic behavior. If you are binging and then over-exercising to fix what you did, that is a bulimic behavior. Anything that is a compensatory behavior, meaning you are trying to fix or make up for what you did with your food, that is bulimic. So there's a lot of subclinical bulimia happening out there in the world with a lot of people that would not be diagnosed. But the diagnosis has everything to do with the frequency of it, how often it's happening, how consistently it happens over a period of time. And so, it was, like I said, it was never about the food. It was about turning to food to deal with or cope with things that I was actually not dealing with or coping with, that I was shoving down with the food. And then the shame of what I did was so great, and the fear of what would happen if I did not get rid of it is what led to the behaviors. And for me, it was purging. It was actual purging. And that over years, would be sometimes over exercising, sometimes fasting. Nobody called it fasting back then. But just not eating or trying not to eat, and then getting so hungry that I would, and then that would turn into a binge. And so while it may not have started about the food, it does become a bit about the food, because when you're restricting yourself to an extent nutritionally, and bulimia is a form of that as well, because by purging, you're actually now denying your body of the nutrients that you would have given it from the food. You can't pick what you get rid of. That was one of the things that helped me stop, was I can't pick what I get rid of. So if I'm eating healthy food and then I'm eating binge food and then I'm throwing it up, I'm getting rid of the nutrients that I was trying to give myself with the healthy food too. And so that's what creates a lot of the long-term health effects of these kinds of eating disorders. So fast forward, I mean, we're talking like it was like 18 years later, when in 2020, when it happened again, right? Never, ever thought I would find myself there again. While I certainly have had overeating episodes, and maybe even what I would have called binge eating episodes, which I now, looking back, a lot of them were not binge. They were not binges. A lot of the time this word binge is used and thrown around. But what we end up doing to ourselves if we overeat and we call it a binge is that now we have catastrophized it in our minds, and it becomes a much bigger issue than it needs to be. And we're beating ourselves up over it. And then that's a lot of the time what would lead, in my case, to the bulimic activity. Because it was, oh my God, this was so bad what I did that I have to do something about it. And the truth is, and a huge thing that got me out of it in 2020 was I committed to tracking the binges, whether I wanted to see it or not. I said, I have to see what I'm doing to myself. I'm going to make myself plug every single thing that I can remember that I ate into Chronometer, and I'm going to look at the calories, I'm going to look at the carbs, I'm going to look at the fat, I'm going to look at all the numbers, and I'm going to get on the scale, and I'm going to look at all the data because I need to see what I'm doing to myself.
Exactly. Wow. I did the same thing. That is so crazy that you just said that. Wow.
It's one of the
Wow.
first steps I tell people. The first thing to do is stop lying to yourself.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
at it, face it. You have to face it.
And what made it like, okay, stop? Like in 2020, what was like, all right, I'm done. Was it that, or was it something different?
Okay. And let me also answer your question about 2020. Why did it come back?
Oh yeah.
Interestingly enough, y'all, what we don't deal with will follow us through life. Remember how I talked about identity at 12, 13, 14 years old? 2020, I had gotten my pro card in 2019. I was getting ready to go compete in LA for my first big pro show at the WBFF. I was going to meet with photographers. I had a whole plan. And at the same time, I left my old career to start my coaching career. I had a few clients. I was like ramping up. I had dreams, big dreams and big goals of what my life was going to be. Everything shuts down. The show gets canceled. I'm 3 weeks out. So I'm already pretty depleted. I'm already pretty lean. On top of that, I had moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in the city by myself, where I thought I was gonna, do all this networking with my neighbors because we were having all of these social get-togethers that never ended up happening. I knew nobody. I had nobody around me. My parents were about an hour away. My sister was about an hour away, and they were the closest people to me. Now I'm by myself. I have nothing to do, nowhere to go. I have no job. I have no income coming in except for a handful of clients. And thank God for Keto Gains, which had come into my life. And so I was working with them. But who the hell am I now? What am I going to do now? What happens? Right? And instead of dealing with it, food. It was, and I was a person who was busy all the time. Always had things on the calendar, running around. Never spent time just with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scared to death to face myself and whatever was going on internally. So, but I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that's what I was doing. But I hid from, it was so easy to hide from the world. It was so easy to hide from people because nobody was seeing each other anyway. And here I find myself in this dark hole. So it was the same concept, same idea that came back until I finally dealt with it. So what got me out of it? Okay, a few things. Number one, I saw how bad it had gotten because I had gotten to the point, and it was probably worse than it had ever been before. I was doing it multiple times a day. I was not sleeping at night because I was doing it all night. And then I would have to sleep until noon the next day because I couldn't get to sleep until 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. I had a rock bottom moment. I spoke about it actually at my first low carb cruise ever. I think the first year was 2022. And I actually put that talk up on my YouTube. But I get really raw about what that rock bottom looked like. And it's one of these visceral images that will never leave my mind. I'll never forget how I felt. And now I know for certain I will never, ever go back there for the rest of my life because of that. So when that happened, I felt desperate. I have to do something about this. And so a few things I did. Number one, ironically, it's going to sound crazy to people who don't understand. I registered for a show. It was the only pro show that year because everything else had gotten canceled. It was in Miami, one of the places that did not shut down. I registered 4 weeks out, and I had to do kind of a what you would probably call an extreme diet. But it really wasn't extreme. It was just stop binging and purging. That's all I had to do, because if I just did that, I would be eating the things that I normally eat. So it was a thing where I said, okay, if I put the money down and I promise I'm going to show up and I'm booking the flights and all of this. I'm doing it. I'm going to do everything to the letter that I have to do to be ready for this show. Now, granted, it was the worst physique I've ever brought to a show. And certainly to a pro show. I mean, it was deer in headlights. My first ever pro show, I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. And I came in dead last. But coming into that show, I'll never forget, I flew down to Miami with my sister and I said to her, I'm so afraid of what's going to happen after the show. Because I'm finally free. I'm finally out of it. I'm not doing it anymore. And I'm so afraid that I'm going to go back to that after the show. Now, lucky for me, I caught COVID at the show, got sicker than I've ever been in my life. And I had to move out of my apartment 10 days later because I'd already decided, killed the lease. I actually decided to move back in with my parents. They didn't know it at the time, but I knew that I needed to not live alone and I needed to have people in the house, even though they didn't know what was going on. And I did not confide in them at that time. Yet, I think it took me about a month before I shared it with my mother and I had a conversation with her about it. But I just knew if they were in the house, I wouldn't do it. And so my exit strategy was get COVID and then move in with my parents. But the lesson there is don't be alone. Right? Because you cannot heal in darkness. You cannot heal when you're hiding. You have to bring it into the light and you have to have support. And then on top of that, divine intervention, incredible. I had done a program with essentially a business coach, a business program that previous year. You may remember him, Mike Bledsoe, from way back in the day. He had a podcast called not Atlas Shrugged. Barbell Shrugged. It was like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
So I did this program with him, and he had these like mastermind groups with like 7-figure coaches, right? That I could never afford to be a part of. Like they cost something like 20 grand a year to be a part of this thing, right? He reached out randomly to say that, hey, we're having our retreat in Utah in September. This was before the show even took place because the show was in November. But he had reached out and said, we're having this retreat. We have a few spots open because of COVID. So they were selling the spots for the weekend that you could then go on this mastermind with these coaches that had paid 20 grand to be a part of this group for the year. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is an easy yes. And then next thing you know, my tax refund hadn't come back yet. My tax refund came in for the exact amount I needed to pay for this retreat. I was like, it was just one of those things where you're like, I can't not do this. This is a clear sign. So I flew out to Utah that September, was just around the most amazing people. That was a little mini reprieve from my habit until the show happened. Because obviously I wasn't going to do it in that group. But it came back and I met the people while I was on that retreat, and I was in a low place and I was just hiding it from people. But these people saw right through me. They did hot seats, they did it, and it was almost like therapy. We started to unpack some things, and most of the people there had been through this other retreat with this other group, a sister group, a company that he invested in called Training Camp for the Soul. And he said, you've got to go to the next TCS, through the next TCS program. And I said, okay, when is it? I'm doing this. Now I know I need to do this. And that program was a 90-day program. I started, I believe, in November. And it went through like January, or maybe I started in December and it went through January or February. So it was coming out of the show. I then had this 90-day program with all the support of the most amazing people in the world. And it was all about unpacking your shit. And I was like, boy, did I need that. And that's where I learned a lot of the things that I now teach to clients and some of the books that I recommend. And I'll just drop one here because I think it's so powerful for everyone to know about this book. It's called The 5 Personality Patterns
Mm.
Not one of those books that's like a personality test and you know, your color or your letter or whatever. It's about patterns. It is about what you learned to go to as a child before you really even had memory. But when a traumatic thing happened to you, and this doesn't have to be like massive trauma, but it can be anything that rattled you as a kid, that as a kid, you saw that as traumatic. And then you
Yeah.
learn to go into these patterns of behavior. And it's called the 5 personality patterns. And that's where I learned, oh, I have this pattern. I have to be busy. I have to fill the space. And that's what I was doing with food. I couldn't be, I couldn't just be. And so I spent most of 2021 living at home with my folks, not working outside the home, slowly building my business, taking a real step back, and spending a lot of time with myself.
Yeah. And I just looked it up. I'm going to have to get that now. The 5
Oh, it's
personality patterns.
amazing. Yes.
Yes, I'm going to. Wow. Okay, so let's switch gears now, because we're winding down, and I want to get to some things about, you're a coach, and I know you do a lot of mindset, but what about the nitty gritty? You know, what's your go-to strategy to break fat loss plateaus? You know, we do have a large community that they come to Keto Carnivore to lose weight. Yes, there's healing. I believe that healing goes along with losing weight though. But what are some common mistakes you see people making in the low carb space when trying to lose weight? So kind of, I guess, those together, what are some go-to things that you have for people who want to lose weight or break a stall in the low carb community?
Oh my gosh, it's like the best question because it's all fresh in my mind. Last night I teach a Monday masterclass for free on my YouTube every Monday. Probably not next Monday, be on the cruise, but most Mondays. So last night I talked about mistakes people make on keto that are keeping them from getting the progress and the results that they want. And this is what I do. This is mostly what I do. I always say I'm not the person to listen to convince you to go keto. I'm not here to convince anybody to go keto or carnivore. But if you are already bought in and you're not getting the results you want, I'm going to diagnose you. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. So a lot of the things that I see, biggest thing I see I have a couple different ladies that come to me from the greater keto carnivore community. But number one, not tracking. So, it's all shots in the dark, right? You see in the discussion boards all the time. Hey, I was losing and now I'm not losing. Why am I not losing? And there's no information.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how are we supposed to help you if you can't tell us anything? So what are you eating now? What were you eating? Where were you coming from? What kind of loss did you have before? All of those things, right? So, but a lot of the time people say, oh no, I don't want to track. Well, how do you really think you're going to make changes? How do you even know you're making changes?
Yeah.
If you're not tracking anything, right? Oh, well, I was eating this and now I'm eating that. Well, just put it into a nutrition tracker and you'll be able to see, well, how much fat were you eating before? How much protein were you eating before? What changed? What did you change? Was it enough of a change? So number one, not tracking or not tracking accurately. I talked about that in class, like, just making assumptions or, using MyFitnessPal. There's a lot of dirty information in there, a lot of bad entries. People can put whatever they want and manipulate the macros in there. So if you're not looking closely at what you're tracking in there, you could be tracking things all kinds of wrong. So I recommend Chronometer. It's the cleanest database out there in terms of the accuracy and the trust that you can put in what's in the database. And you can track your micronutrients there too, which is really cool. So the tracking. But number two, just eating way too much fat. Because you've been told to eat sticks of butter and you've been told, oh, you're not losing fat, you need more fat.
Oh my
You gotta eat fat to burn fat. It really doesn't work that way. If you've got fat on your body, you got plenty of fat to burn. So adding more fat is going to do nothing but store more fat. So that's another one. Not eating enough. not eating enough in general,
Mm-hmm.
way too much fasting, extended fasting, long-term fasting. I've been fasting for such and such years of 24 hours on and off, or, oh, it was 16/8. Now I'm doing 18. Now I'm doing 20. Now I'm doing 24. Oh, look at me. I'm so great. I'm doing 72-hour fasts. That
Yeah.
is nothing but kill your metabolism, downregulate your system, and then your body learns to survive on less. So now you sneeze at another calorie and boom, you're putting on weight. So now you can only lose when you're fasting, and as soon as you eat again, you put it back on again. Well, that's how food works.
Yeah. So
You know?
true. And so you do a lot of reverse dieting with your clients?
I do. So the two main people who come to me, we're either going to put you on a cut, or we're going to put you into a building phase, or a metabolic restoration is what I call it. It's essentially a reverse diet. But metabolic restoration phase, to bring you up to find your maintenance, you unfortunately might already be at your maintenance. You could be eating, 1,100 calories and you're already at your maintenance. Well, we're going to go slow, and we're going to put the right things in place so that we can ramp up your metabolism, and you can slowly over time increase how much you can consume. And I'm sorry, but you're not going to lose weight doing that. You're not going to see the scale go down. Sometimes my ladies do that, and oh my gosh, they start losing, and it's like, what? But that should not be the expectation either. The goal during that phase is to actually maintain. If you can maintain,
Yep.
and then you're eating a lot more, that's a huge win. And then you're in a place where eventually we can go into a cut again, and we can continue to do that. And then we can cycle in and out of cuts. So we meet people where they are. We have ladies on cuts. We have ladies in a pure building phase. We have ladies on metabolic restoration, and then we have ladies in what I call recomp, or it's essentially a maintenance phase. You're eating at your maintenance level, but you're eating the right balance of macronutrients, and you're training in a way that you're building muscle and losing body fat at the same time.
That's
And
the best.
that's the thing. That's a myth, right? Oh, you can't recomp. That's not true. We absolutely can recomp. And some people are in a really beautiful position to do it. And so let me tell you, all you ladies who have excess body fat, or men who have excess body fat and have not been training with weights, with resistance, if you are new to training and you have a lot of body fat, you can get some incredible recomp. Better than you will build muscle like a champ, and you will lose body fat faster than anybody else on a recomp. And for that, that's the next mistake: not eating enough protein. People are afraid of protein. They think it's going to turn into sugar and cause them, worse problems with diabetes, or blood sugar, or, stall their weight loss. So the protein's not stalling your weight loss. Actually, let me pause. The protein may be stalling your weight loss, but it's not stalling your fat loss. And I don't know anybody here who wants to lose muscle, bone, tissue from your body. Like, no, you want to lose fat, right? So let's stop calling it weight loss. I'm so over weight loss. I wish I could kill that word. That means nothing. Losing weight on the scale doesn't tell us anything. It tells us nothing.
Exactly. And I love that you said that. Sorry, go on.
No, I get so discouraged, and you mentioned plateaus, right? Let me make this clear. 4 days is not a plateau. 8 days is not a plateau. 10 days is not a plateau. 14 days is not a plateau. If you're looking for massive changes in 2 weeks, if you have seen no changes in 2 weeks, in 14 days, you are not yet at a plateau. Give it 4 weeks, give it 6 weeks. Then you can say you've plateaued, but you have not plateaued in 2 weeks. It takes about 10 to 14 days for your body to even figure out you're doing something different. Exactly. I've clocked this on my preps. And so you talked about plateaus, right? Something that we do in competition prep after we've been in it for a while, meaning we've been cutting for a while. So any of you who've been on a weight loss, fat loss journey for a while, you hit these plateaus. Well, plateaus, for one, are part of the process. What I always like to say to my ladies who are stressing out about plateaus, well, how much did you weigh a month ago? How much did you weigh 2 months ago? Because if you're plateaued at your old low, that is a win. That is a huge win.
Yes.
If we're staying at our low in a fat loss phase, that is supposed to happen, and that will naturally happen. It's success. It's showing you, hey, I can now maintain at this lower level of body fat. I want to be able to be capable of maintaining here. You're going to maintain there for a little while before you get the next drop. And so in a prep, we're being so dialed in that we're looking at our nutrition, we're looking at our activity, we're looking at our training, we're looking at all the things. So we can say, okay, it's been 2 weeks and we haven't seen a change. We got to change something. So we cut further or we increase cardio. And then it may take 7 to 10 to 14 days for us to get that next drop because the body has not yet figured out that we're doing something different. It takes a little while for it to figure out that you're in a deficit. So it's not overnight. Anything you're seeing overnight is water. It's fluid. Fat, you don't lose fat overnight. You're not going to lose fat every night. It doesn't happen that way. Your fat cells swell up with water to hold their shape and size because they think you're putting it right back on again. So guess what? What happens when you cheat 4 days in? That fat cell that released the fatty acids are free floating in your blood. They want to leave your body. They want to get out of there. But you just told them, oh, nope, never mind. We're not in a deficit. Put it back in. Put it back in. We need that for later. So if you're going 3 days, 4 days, 7 days, 10 days, oh, I deserve to eat this thing. I deserve to have this cheat meal. You were gonna get that drop. It was coming. You just didn't wait for the whoosh.
That's it.
That's what the whoosh is.
The whoosh.
That fat cell wants to hold on. That fat cell is like, we want to stay where we are. And then you keep going and it's like, oh, I guess not. I guess they're not putting it back in. All right, let it go. There goes the water. Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
so
that is so good.
Journey, that's what it is at the beginning of the journey. Oh, I went keto and I lost 5 pounds the first week. It was water from the carb because you're not eating the carbs anymore. Carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Carbs are hydrating. They hydrate the cells. So 1 molecule of carbohydrate is 3 molecules of water. So when you cut the carbs, you're going to cut the water, and that looks like you get all excited. And I'm not mad at it. Look, if it gets you motivated to keep going, great. But don't get discouraged the following week or 4 weeks later or whatever when you're like, okay, now I'm not losing anymore. Because that wasn't fat. That wasn't fat yet. You've got to actually teach your body you're doing something different. And then when it gets on board and it's like, oh, okay, I don't have enough energy coming in, fuel coming in to maintain where I am, I have to let go of this fat.
Exactly.
That takes time.
I love that. I love that whoosh effect. Yes. So, okay, as we close out, we want to thank you because this has been so enlightening to get to know you better. I love it. But 2 rapid fire questions. One, yes or no, GLP-1, what do you think in like 3 words or less? And then what is your favorite after show treat that you want to just, the ones where they take the picture with, do you have any of those? So GLP-1, yes or no?
It's nuanced. I wouldn't say yes or no. It depends on the person, the situation, and the use.
Yes. Okay. I like that. Ooh, okay. And then what is that treat that you go to, or do you even not do that anymore? What's your go-to after a show?
Yeah, I don't so much do that anymore. The shows usually get out late. So it might be a burger. I might do sweet potato fries. Or the last show I saved it and we went to a Brazilian steakhouse. So it was too late that night to really do that, but we waited until the end of the trip and we did the big Brazilian steakhouse and that was amazing.
That's the best kind of treat. Okay. Thank you so much. Everybody unmute and say good night to Natalie. We really appreciated this, Natalie. Thank you so much. Yes, yes.
Thank you. Great interview.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks,
interview.
guys.
Such a good interview. Woohoo.
Great interview. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Coach. Thank you,
Thank you.
Coach Nat.
All right, Natalie, enjoy your low carb cruise.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Thank you.
you.